Uh-oh, Donald. FBI whistleblowers are talking to the MeidasTouch network about what you're hiding in the Epstein files. We've got our sources. Allison Gill from Mueller, she wrote, Katie Fang, as we keep building out the MeidasTouch network with some of the greatest independent reporters in the game today. Guess what? We're also getting sources inside the FBI who tell us about your dirty deeds. I want to go and talk about what we're learning from Allison and Katie in just a moment. You're not going to want to miss this. A reminder, subscribe to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel. Let's get to 6 million subscribers. Subscribe to Katie Fang and Allison's channels as well. So I just find it interesting that Dan Bongino, the former deputy FBI director who was previously a podcaster before becoming the deputy FBI director, he said he was going to expose the Epstein files and release everybody on the list. Well, Dan Bongino has gone back to podcasting, and now he's attacking Thomas Massie, the Kentucky Republican, who has been instrumental in releasing the Epstein files. So Bongino, you're mad at the guy who's actually did the work with Ro Khanna to release the files? Okay. Dan Bongino and Cat Turd attacking Thomas Massie. That's who was running the FBI, a guy who's now retweeting the Republican mascot, Cat Turd, the MAGA mascot. Bongino's also warring with former Congress member Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz said, when did Dan Bongino run for office and how did he perform as a candidate? To which Dan Bongino attacks Matt Gaetz. Maybe if I spent more time at shady parties with moneyed insiders, I would have won. I heard you know a bit about that. You've always been a dick, by the way, grifting off your daddy like a suckling little doggy. When I first met you in the Panhandle, I knew you were a piece of shit. It's written all over that phony face of yours. Okay, Dan Bongino, I'm not sure if I were you, I'd be talking about other people's faces right now. But could you believe this is the way these people talk to each other? These are like a bunch of freaking maniacs, by the way. And then you have Dan Bongino reposting these right-wing accounts. You're damn right I did. Dan Bongino announces he's declared war on grifters and black pillars attempting to hijack MAGA. That's about to be some freaking hell to pay. To which Cat Turd, you're probably like, Ben, what are you even talking about here? Can you just tell me about what your sources from the FBI know? I'm just trying to show you that this was the guy and these are the people who are leading MAGA, and they have their own like Furby language that they speak to each other in. And I'm just trying to show you like what they're talking about. Dan had the #1 podcast. He's about to expose all these piece of shit losers, and I'm here for it, is what Cat Turd says. They're talking about the MAGA grifters that they're going after. You guys may want to meet a mirror and look at yourself when you say all that stuff. All right, well, Dan Bongino said that it was busy last day on his job 2 days ago, and it's going to be his last to post from his official FBI account. The MeidasTouch is hard at work with FBI sources exposing Donald Trump's lies about the Epstein files. So why don't I bring in Katie Fang and Allison? Make sure you subscribe to their channels as well. Katie, take it away.
One of the greatest things about being in partnership with the MeidasTouch network is I get to work with other contributors like Allison Gill. And when she reached out to me about her sourced, confidential, anonymous, new information regarding the Epstein files and how it was linked to my recent reporting that shows that it's not plausible, feasible, reasonable, or the truth that the U.S. Attorney's Office or the FBI just suddenly discovered 1 million more documents right around Christmas time that dealt with Epstein, Maxwell, and others, I jumped at the opportunity to be able to spend time with her. And so Alice and I got together and we recorded an episode that we are going to show you now so that you can be caught up on why it doesn't seem real that the U.S. Attorney's Office suddenly discovered these documents and why it just goes to show that the obstruction is the point.
I know I was supposed to take a break this week. I was supposed to have this week off, but I do have some exclusive breaking news that landed on my desk. And I have this for you. And this is about the claims made by Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal attorney, now Deputy Attorney General, who is still his personal attorney. And Todd Blanche's claims that, oops, we found 1 million never seen before Epstein documents. Now, he says he was contacted by the FBI New York field office and the Southern District of New York. Well, maybe he didn't say it. Maybe the White House said it, because now the White House controls the Department of Justice Twitter account, which is banana pants in its own right. That's a whole different story. But somebody at the DOJ social media account says that Todd Blanche was contacted by the Southern District of New York FBI field office. And whoa, we've got 1 million new documents. And he's put lawyers on it from the National Security Division at Maine Justice. We'll talk about that and who's part of that. And lawyers in the Southern District of Florida. There was a memo that went out that said, hey, lawyers in the Southern District of Florida, even though your life sucks and we fired all your colleagues and morale is in the shitter, we would love for you to spend your Christmas holiday, kind of hinting at, hey, if you're Jewish, Hanukkah's over. Will you remotely redact these files and help, protect pedophiles? I'm sure you would love to do that for your holiday season. So we had that. And I actually reached out to sources, to sources at the FBI who I've spoken to before, I've been speaking to for most of the year, and sources at the Department of Justice who participated in the project to redact the Epstein files, also known as, to most FBI agents who worked on it, this bullshit. And they did this past March. And they have actually exposed Todd Blanche's lies. And like I said, I have that exclusive breaking news for you here on the MeidasTouch Network today. So welcome to the breakdown. Okay, and joining me today, I couldn't think of a better person to join me today because of some reporting that my colleague here at MeidasTouch did about the 1 million document lie. Someone who's been reporting on this did a report the day after Christmas. My colleague here, like I said, at Meidas, Katie Fang. Katie, hello, welcome.
Oh, Allison, it's so nice to be with you, and happy holidays.
Thank you. You as well. This is what we do over the holidays. Big ups to women in independent media for getting this information out. First of all, everybody needs to see your reporting on this alleged 1 million document discovery being peddled by Todd Blanche, who's already been caught in so many lies this term. Documentary evidence. I'm thinking of the Abrego case where he said, I had nothing to do with the decision to charge Mr. Abrego with crimes. Oops, because of some discovery we pried out of the government. Turns out that was a lie. I feel like Maury Povich. Turns out, lie detector says, that was a lie. So he's already been caught.
You are the father. Yeah.
You are the father of a bunch of bullshit.
Of all the lies.
So, not only should he not be trusted, Katie, it should be assumed that the opposite of whatever he says is actually the truth. So 100%. You went over a couple of letters and memos and statements that indicate that the Department of Justice has had the New York FBI field office and Southern District of New York Epstein files for a long time now. So let's start, and we're going to have a link in the show notes, by the way, to your report, because I absolutely love it. So let's start with the letter that Jamie Raskin sent to Pamela Jo Bondi pursuant to whistleblower survivors and survivors' attorneys who came and spoke to him as protected whistleblowers.
Yeah, you got to hand it to certain members of Congress that have doggedly made this a priority, in addition to all the other hard work that they've been doing on behalf of all Americans. And I always underscore this, that it's regardless of party affiliation, they're fighting for all of us, whether you like it or not, right? Whether you appreciate it or not, they are. And I think of people like Jamie Raskin and Robert Garcia and others, right? So Jamie Raskin, back on November 3rd of 2025, sent this letter to Pamela Jo. Pam Bondi, sorry. I call her Pamela Jo.
So do I.
Okay. Yes. So Pammy Jo gets this letter back on November 3rd. And what's impeccable about Jamie Raskin is he brings receipts always. And not only does he have plethora of footnotes and endnotes, but he cites to the counsel for the Epstein victims and survivors when he says that up until January of 2025, and of course, no coincidences, right? When Trump gets sworn into office, there were representations made that there was an ongoing investigation into co-conspirators of Epstein, Maxwell, and others. And then suddenly and abruptly, in January of 2025, not only are those investigations terminated, but the entirety of the Epstein case file is transferred to Maine Justice, which is what we refer to as the Department of Justice located in Washington, D.C. So Raskin, as early, we'll say early, not late, as November 3rd of 2025, in his letter to Pamela Joe states that there was an active investigation into Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators until January of 2025. And then in January, the Southern District of New York was ordered by Maine Justice to transfer the Epstein case files to DOJ headquarters in Washington, D.C. Since that time, January of 2025, crickets in terms of any type of outreach, active investigation, or active pursuit of any of the threads that you could pull, financial, or otherwise, that could be relevant to Epstein and Maxwell. And so when I saw that, Allison, I was like, whoa, hold a second. How in the world can Todd Blanche, as the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, now make a public affirmative representation to us as Americans that they, quote unquote, suddenly found more than 1 million documents?
Right. And, then you brought up a letter from Pammy Joe to Kash Patel that she wrote way back on February 27th. And it had something to do with, I've heard that there are now a bunch of files that you found in New York. You need to send them to me. You have until tomorrow morning, and then you have 14 days to tell me why, et cetera. So talk about that letter as well.
Well, that was kind of outrageous. And let me be clear, too. Congressman Raskin, Jamie Raskin, also demanded information for Pamela Joe. And of course, they got nothing, right? Because why bother? Why bother to have transparency in your role to Congress, even though Congress understandably is looking from, House Judiciary? They're like, hey, we need to have this information. So this letter that you just talked about, it's such a curious tenor, right? Because it's dated February 27th from Pamela Joe to Kash Patel. And it basically is, again, going through the chronology of Pamela Joe trying to cover her ass in terms of trying to get her hands on the Epstein files. Now, there's no coincidences again. February 27th, the date of this letter, Allison, is the same date that Pamela Joe sat down at the White House with 15 far-right MAGA influencers, and she herself personally delivered, quote unquote, Epstein file binder number 1. And present at that meeting was convicted felon Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Todd Blanche, Kash Patel, and others, right? So they're all there for this big fanfare that was a big womp womp, nothing new. But she tells Kash Patel in this letter that late yesterday, as of February 26th, I learned from a, quote, source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. Because she says earlier in this letter, Allison, that she had only received 200 pages of documents, most of which, 99% of which had already been made publicly available. So she demanded by February 28th at 8 a.m. that you, the FBI, deliver, quote, the full and complete Epstein files to my office. And she said, you also have to give me a report within 14 days, comprehensively covering why my order to the FBI was never followed to begin with. And of course, once again, crickets. There's no evidence of a comprehensive report ever been generated by Kash Patel, nor is there evidence that thousands of pages of documents were sent over to the DOJ as far back as the end of February of 2025.
No. So we're sitting here looking at these letters, assuming that Todd Blanche is full of it and that these documents had already been transferred early in the year. Well, I have to tell you, because on your show here on MeidasTouch, you said, given that turnaround and the demand by Pam Bondi, that if you were being generous and showing the government a little bit of grace and being a little generous, that the Department of Justice would have received all the New York files probably in March. Okay. Now, Katie, when I saw those letters, I reached out to the same sources who told me about the 1,000 people locked in the building, confirming Jason Leopold's reporting from March. I got new information about there being an Excel spreadsheet to log Trump's name and a master file Excel spreadsheet.
I remember that report from you. Yeah.
PowerPoint presentation with training videos on how to find and redact Trump's name and mark stuff for redaction in the Epstein Transparency Project, which is hilarious. Well, I reached back out to them about these letters. And again, these are the same ones who told me about the training videos, which again was confirmed by Jason Leopold this past November. And sources say that not only did New York send over everything they had in March, but that the entire review process using the 1,000 analysts from the Information Management Division at the FBI, that exercise was specifically to review the boxes of files from New York, 300,000 pages, 100,000 files from New York. And they were to redact them and send them to the Department of Justice for eventual release. That was their job. And one source told me it was a comprehensive set of files from New York, with some of the files dating back to 2009, around the Sweetheart deal time.
Yeah.
So this wasn't just like we found a couple of files, or we found some grand jury materials, or, we found the 302s. This was supposed to be a comprehensive set. And they have confirmed that entire exercise in March, where they paid $1 million in overtime for a week when they locked the 1,000 people in the building, 24, 48-hour shifts, that review was the review of the New York files Pam Bondi asked Kash Patel for in the February 27th letter. That's according to people who were there. I said, was your job there in response to that Pam Bondi letter? They said, yes, that is our understanding. So I just had to let you know that.
That's like nuts. But it's so on brand, isn't it? I mean, again, I've always tried to be generous about the construction of this and to not think that it's totally nefarious. And one of the most generous ways to interpret this is like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing kind of energy. And yet that doesn't actually pass the smell test here. They have had possession and or have known about this stuff, which is why the July memo that was publicly released by the FBI and the DOJ together, right, jointly, claiming that there was nothing there, that it was all a nothing burger, that they had reviewed 300 gigabytes of data and evidence, and that there were no more co-conspirators to investigate, etc. I mean, it was such a big show in July. And to know that they've had their hands on this, Allison, just goes to show that the true conspiracy is happening in the Trump administration.
Yeah, for sure. And Katie, I took this a step further after watching your report, reaching out to sources at the FBI and DOJ that reviewed the files in March, current and former. I recalled, as I mentioned earlier, Jason Leopold at Bloomberg recently in November released 76 pages of internal FBI emails about the Epstein redaction project. So I figured I'd look in those emails to see what it said about the files from New York. Here's one email. This is from the assistant director of the FBI Information Management Division. The IMD is that 1,000 plus agents that were redacting the files. Her name is Sharon Perry. She's all over these emails. It's dated March 10th. Okay, so think about that, everybody. This is 12 days after Pam Bondi demanded the files. And this email says, we are prepared to receive boxes tomorrow as New York agents are traveling to the Washington field office in the morning and will arrive to Winchester, where they will start photographing and we will start scanning and processing these physical files. Once I see the volume of files, I'll have a better estimate of processing times, although I suggest we do a rolling delivery to further demonstrate the FBI's commitment to delivery and transparency.
Unbelievable.
So
March 10th, 2025.
Now, here's an email sent from April 15th from the FBI IMD assistant director, same person. April 15th, a little over a month later. Also, did you happen to send the results of the below to headquarters and or DOJ at any point? If not, no worries. Just want to confirm if there are any additional deliverables to provide to the Department of Justice. To date, we have provided the redaction project and the 1B Excel summary of the video and media content. So there is an April 15th email saying we have sent over the comprehensive Epstein files from New York field office over to Washington, to the FBI, to be processed, redacted, reviewed, and sent to the Department of Justice pursuant to Pamela Bondi's letter.
Past tense, we have provided, past tense, the redaction project. And this is as of April 15th of 2025.
Yeah. So March, you gave them a little grace. I guess they needed a little more grace to get it, to get it done by April 15th, tax day. And Katie, I also wanted to point out something that you mentioned in your reporting, that Blanche had assigned redactions to the national security lawyers at Maine Justice.
That's right. Because that was a part of one of the permissible withholdings and redactions that was allowed under the Transparency Act.
Now, I just want to make sure everybody knows who's in charge of that group of lawyers. It's a guy named John Eisenberg. And if that sounds familiar, it's way in the past, but Katie, that's the same lawyer who removed Alex Vindman's edits.
The impeachment stuff. Oh my God, with Zelensky. Oh my gosh.
That's the guy who wouldn't accept Vindman's edits on the transcript. And that's the guy who hid that transcript in the secret code word classified system to keep eyes off. So known document manipulator is in charge of redacting the Epstein files.
But you know what else is, but you know, there really shouldn't, well, I mean, you know what, I could be totally dead wrong on this, right, Allison? But there really shouldn't be a lot of national security information, you would think, in this. Then again, I don't know. There's a reason why everybody's been talking about, who was it? It was Mike Johnson, right? Who was like, oh, was Trump actually an agent, or was he doing something for the government? I mean, look, I don't mind if stuff is redacted for classified purposes. I actually raised in this video I did yesterday my concern that 15 days that the DOJ has, or the Attorney General has, to present to Congress. My fear, Allison, is Pamela Jo waits until the very end of that rolling production. So we don't get it from the 15 days from December 19th, the explanation of what was withheld and redacted. We actually get it whenever the hell this ends. And according to Blanche, it's going to take at least a few more weeks to be able to even go through the documents.
Yeah. And honestly, I did the math. At the current rate of release, they're going to be releasing these documents, if there are in fact a million more that they just happen to find, up until like
another 10 weeks or something, right?
No, like mid-2031. Like there's so many documents. But you know, I don't know. It depends, because they had 1,000 people do it. It took them, you know, a bunch of overtime, $1 million in overtime to go through about 300,000 pages. So they have 200 national security lawyers. That's a fifth of the amount of people they had to do the 300,000 pages. So, you know, just back of the envelope, it's going to be a while.
Well, they were also looking for reinforcements. And remember, too, the DOJ has been gutted when it comes to lawyers and staff. I mean, those people are, and you can't just have staff doing this. You have to have lawyers that are looking at it for purposes of privilege and all that other stuff, even though that is not a permissive redaction point. Let me be very clear. The law, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, doesn't allow for privilege redactions, doesn't allow for those things. So when you've seen, like, I actually posted on social the other day, I was like, they redacted the phone number for the fax machine at the Metropolitan Correction Center, the legal department's fax machine, and they've redacted names of prosecutors and other people that were not legally permissible redactions. And that really bothered me, because it's one thing to err on the side of caution. It's a whole other thing to be redacting things that are not allowed to be removed.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why I think it's in the national security lawyer's hands, and not just because Eisenberg is friendly to omitting things from documents that he doesn't want people to see and hiding them in code word classified systems, but Donald Trump's excuse for everything, ever since the Supreme Court. Remember when the Supreme Court said you have to talk about how to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States?
Facilitate, exactly. Yeah.
But they put a sentence in there that said, but the courts must show due regard and deference to the president when it comes to national security issues. And ever since that sentence was written in that decision, the Trump administration has been like, everything that they don't want to talk about is national security. The agreement with Bukele, national security. Me building the East Wing with the bunker underneath, national security. You can't stop me. Me deporting people to third countries, national security. Me trying to use the Alien Enemies Act to disappear people to El Salvador and Seco prison, national security. Everything's national security. And I think that he can see the writing on the wall, and people are going to ask why so many things are being withheld, even if she doesn't start the 15-day clock until the entire rolling production is done, so that he can say national security. That's why I've redacted these things.
Well, and we also know that Jay Clayton at the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, again, no coincidences, the office that purportedly just, quote unquote, stumbled over 1 million more documents that they just turned over to Maine Justice. You know, there's allegedly some investigation that has been ordered by Pamela Jo Bondi to be conducted concerning Democrats solely as it relates to Epstein and the Epstein files. So that was, if you look at the law, the idea of an active criminal and pending investigation was grounds for redactions and withholdings. And so I also suspect that's going to be provided by Pamela Jo as an excuse as to why some of these things weren't turned over as well.
Yeah. And one last thing I wanted to tell you, I'm in touch with a source who wants to, remain anonymous for obvious reasons. That is a document storage expert at Information Management Division. And I asked, what would it take? Explain to me how you would lose 400 bankers' boxes of documents, because 1 million pages is roughly 400 bankers' boxes.
That's crazy.
And the person, like I said, who wishes to remain anonymous, said, well, it would be very unlikely.
Yeah.
The only innocent explanation is that all 400 boxes were scanned into the system on the same day, and there was some massive glitch where nothing from that day made it into the digital inventory, and none of the audits that generally take place to check this scanned inventory were completed. Because even in that scenario, because of the audits, the error would have been caught immediately and quickly corrected. In fact, Katie, I was told that if you lost 400 boxes of documents, you would have to lose them on purpose. You would have to be hiding them. So the 1 million documents was either hidden through malfeasance and discovered later because everyone was looking for them, or it's a BS thing that doesn't exist at all.
Well, think about the rock and the hard place. If they actually gave a shit, which we know they don't, Allison, the DOJ finds itself, right? Or the federal government, kind of writ large. You either, and I always love the word malfeasance, although in this regard, I think it veers so strongly into the land of criminal intent, like spoliation of evidence type of shit. Like, let's just get rid of the evidence, right? So it's either malfeasance, intent, specific intent to hide this stuff, right? Until you got your ass busted. Or you're so negligent or incompetent that you can also rise to the level of being criminally negligent and criminally incompetent. I mean, it's like either one makes you look bad. And again, that presupposes they actually care, although I think they should, because as I said, you had a near unanimous support for this, absent one person who said no in the House. But across the board in Congress, you had near unanimous consent on this law. So I would be stunned to see a lack of energy going into a demand for explanations behind what is happening here. And the stupidity behind all this too, Allison, is this rolling production, which is otherwise okay in litigation, right? But this rolling production that is happening right now just keeps it in the media cycle over and over and over again. And so to your point, if it takes them that long to get through 1 million documents, we'll be dealing with Epstein files production through November of 2026, yeah. Right? I mean, we'll be dealing with this through the midterms. And this is one of those things that will never go away. Because once actually everything, and even then I don't believe it'll always be everything that's out there, which is the most horrific thing, right? Like if you're a victim or survivor, the fact that this could be hanging over your head, this idea that not all of it is out there, it just cheats them of justice, I think, and true accountability. But like, if you think about it, this is one of those things where when the information does come out, because also remember, we're still getting stuff from the Epstein estate as well. Mm-hmm. Financials, there's subpoenas, duces tecum that were served on financial institutions. Think about all the different threads that we can continue to pull just to show what wasn't done before, what wasn't chased down before, and people who care enough to do it. And this is us, right? This is you and I, two independent female journalists on a holiday, Sunday, December 28th, right? Like we're doing this like because we care, you can imagine like how many people are also going to approach somebody like you that's trusted, that they know will bring this to light and protect them, as well. I mean, that's a big deal in my mind. This is one of those things that's just not going to go away.
No, right. And before I let you go, I just have to tell you that one of the sources I spoke to wanted to remind us that if you were going to hide 1 million documents, if that is something that somebody wanted to do, this would have been around the time frame when people at the New York FBI field office were in cahoots with Rudy Giuliani to release the Wiener laptop and the Hillary emails in an effort to force Jim Comey to reopen the case. So there were a lot of very pro-Trump, anti-Hillary FBI agents in the New York field office at that time. So I don't know. It's just something to think about. It's one of 3 possibilities here, and all of them mean that Todd Blanche is lying. So I was
going to say the common denominator through all of this concerning Blanche and Pamela Joe is the lies. You sit on a throne of lies. It's like, that's what really bothered me, right? I kept on like going through all these documents and I'm like, wait, we can go this far back. And if we keep on going farther and farther back, we see these representations made. And the funny thing is they want to embrace this kind of public forward facing shit. And if they only learned their lesson, and if they were circumspect, right, about how they as federal officials deal with the public, and if they weren't like Dan Bingo Boingo Bongino and everybody racing and Kash Patel, I'll meet you in Valhalla. Like if if they weren't racing to be all out there in social media, as is Pam Bondi, they probably would not be, it wouldn't be this obvious, right? They wouldn't be so busted. Although candidly, this would all come out one way or another.
You'd think that they would know the massive public interest. But I have to tell you, in my FOIA lawsuit, I've sued the government Department of Justice to get those training videos for the Epstein redaction process.
Yeah.
They finally responded. Their reason for not for opposing my expedited processing of those videos, their actual reason, Katie, is that there is not widespread public interest in the Epstein matter. That's their actual argument that I failed to show.
Which is so bad faith. It's almost laughable how bad faith that is.
We'll see what Judge Beryl Howell says about it. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today.
We love Judge Beryl Howell, by the way.
Yes, we do.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for this amazing breaking news. It just makes us feel better that the more we push this, the more people are willing to come forward and verify and corroborate what we're putting out there.
Yeah, I agree. It's always good to see you, my friend. I hope you have a wonderful new year.
Happy New Year, my friend.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching The Breakdown. I know we weren't supposed to be here. I know we were supposed to take that day off, but I really wanted to get that breaking news to you. And thanks again to my friend and colleague here at the MeidasTouch Network, Katie Fang. There's a lot of other news that happened this week, and you can catch it all on the Daily Beans podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. So thanks so much for watching The Breakdown.
Katie Fang here. We launched the Katie Fang News Channel in partnership with the MeidasTouch Network so we could bring you the latest in legal and political news. Straight, no chaser. So if you're a fellow truth teller, hit that subscribe button and share the word about this channel so we can build a high information America together.
New Meidas merch. Head to store.meidastouch.com today and get yourself the best pro-democracy gear and show your support. That's store.meidastouch.com.